Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and always a great day when I have my very, very good longtime friends in the studio. Deacon Jim Vargas, CEO of Father Joe's Villages, and we were chatting right before the show. Deacon Jim is just one of these guys that never ages, for God's sake. You look great, Jim. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. You're the one who never ages. I love all the hair you have.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's a very authentic-looking toupee, isn't it? No, it's really not a toupee. And I got to quit joking like that because people stare and they go, that is an authentic-looking toupee. No, it's not. And joining us, longtime friend and colleague, Neville Billamoria, Senior VP of Marketing and Community Relations for Mission Fed Credit Union. And as our folks know, our Spotlight on the Community Show now is sponsored by Mission Fed. Thank you very much, Neville. And then we're in these beautiful Mission Fed studios here at the headquarters in Scripps Ranch. And so far, so good. I hope you're enjoying this new partnership.
It is fantastic. It is so fun to have people like Deacon Jim come in and be able to greet him and spend time and frankly learn with all of our guests about go deeper. I have the privilege of knowing a little bit about Father Joe's Village because we had a glorious personalized tour with Deacon Jim, but in many cases, it's a chance to really understand and go deep with our partners and the local community social impact creators.
Yeah, you know what's great about that, and so I've been lucky. As you know, Jim was the senior VP in charge of human resources for Copley Press, and we worked together many years. And he was there when we launched this radio. Sign On Radio back in 2007. Believe it or not, we're in our 16th year, which is going strong. And to your point, Neville, it's I always learn something new when folks like Deacon Jim are on. And that if you think you know everything about this organization, which we've had on many times, I go, gee, I didn't know that, and that's great. So, Deacon Jim, for those infinitesimal amount of our Spotlight on the Community listeners that don't know the mission of Father Joe's Villages, maybe you can give us a little nickel tour.
Sure, I can. And my pleasure. And the relationship we have with Neville and Mission Fed is extremely important to us, so we appreciate all the support they give us. Well, Father Joe's Villages is the oldest homeless services provider in Southern California. We date back to 1950. And we really came into our own in the 1980s when Father Joe Carroll came onto the scene, and he realized that the services that were out there in the community were too disparate, and so as a result, people weren't connecting to the extent that they needed to in order for effectively to address their homelessness. So he put together a comprehensive program, Comprehensive Village, and that's the legacy that we can continue today. So anywhere from a shelter bed all the way up to affordable housing and permanent supportive housing and everything in between, from the million meals that we serve, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 365 days a year, to the therapeutic childcare center for the kids who come to us academically and emotionally and socially delayed, so we're able to work with them. Our employment center, vocational training, because we know with training and marketable skills comes employment and then income and self-sufficiency. So just across the board, we're really blessed to have a robust organization with passionate people to help people off the street.
Yeah, without question. And to know if anyone has been down to your complex, whatever you want to call it, the footprint is huge down there, and you offer so many of the services you're talking about. And I really do encourage people to get a tour. It'll open your eyes about the unbelievable things that you are doing down there, and they're going to have a very different perspective. And they're going to have a perspective where, how do I volunteer? How do I sign up, to volunteer as soon as possible on this? I know you are so proud of this state of homelessness in San Diego. You just published a report on this, and why don't you give us sort of we could talk about this for 15 hours, by the way, but we don't have that on this show. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Right. No, thank you. I appreciate that. You're right. I mean, we're as frustrated as everyone else is in the community when we see the number of those who are falling onto the streets just increase and increase. And so the impetus of that was that this year, we've had a 10% increase over the last count, right? So in 2020, which was the last count that was taken, the community of San Diego County had a little over 7,600 individuals who were either on the streets or in shelters, but in some level of homelessness. And now that number's over 8,400. So there's a 10% increase. There's an increase in families who are falling onto the streets. Then there's an increase in seniors who are falling onto the streets, right? So we decided that we would really take a deep dive into it, and we published a state of homelessness as we see it here in the county of San Diego, and the solutions that are at work, solutions that we have at work. It's an opportunity for us not only to raise awareness, but also to get people engaged, right? So, I mean, it's not just Father Joe's Villages who's working on this. The county's working on it, the city, and other homeless services providers. And we need to really band together and also dispel some myths. So we can talk about some of those myths if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Neville, this is near and dear, as Deacon Jim was mentioning, to Mission Fed's heart. The DNA of Mission Fed has been, since its inception, is to reach out in the community. Started off focused on education, of course, and hasn't stopped with education. But talk about how important these social impact issues are with you personally and with Mission Fed.
Well, they're critically important. If equity is bottom-up healing, then serving and supporting our most underestimated brothers and sisters, and I use underestimated intentionally, as opposed to underserved or unsheltered. There's a lot of othering that we can do with our words. But I think ultimately, particularly with COVID, we realized that those that were struggling from food insufficiency and homelessness were the ones that needed the most help. And we were honored to support Father Joe's Village last year as a sponsor because we think that's important. We pivoted from a no silence and no selling strategy with COVID to a hope, help, and healing focus. And I think personally, the very first volunteer role I had was as part of Interact Club, which was a subset of Rotary, in Bombay, India, on a 1 mile area where they had almost 1 million people living in a slum. And I would feed powdered formula to infants that otherwise would not have any food. And that was my introduction to the disparities of I could walk 5 minutes and be in an entirely different world. So personally, it matters to me. Mission Fed really cares about our community. It's all about uplifting. We're a double bottom line organization, so social purpose is super important. And the work that Father Joe's Village does is incredible.
Yeah, and we all need to be rowing in this direction. I'm Drew Schlosberg, Cloudcast Media, chatting with Deacon Jim Vargas, CEO of Father Joe's Villages, and Neva Villamoria, Senior VP of Marketing and Community Relations for Mission Fed. And, Jim, it takes folks like Mission Fed and the myriad people that work with you on this. Let me ask you this. It's a question I ask all the time on the show, and you always have great answers to it. And half of it is just educating the people who live in San Diego County, the 3.4 million people here, about this is a very serious issue, but you better have some compassion or else we're not going to solve this problem. Talk about that.
Well, for sure you have compassion. You can tell the compassion that Neville personally has.
Right.
And that's why I appreciate him so much, and of course Mission Fed in general. Well, and Mission Fed hires people like Neville. Right, that have the heart for the community, and that's what makes them so effective, and we appreciate that. Yes, you have to have compassion, right? These are individuals who, for whatever reason, have fallen into homelessness. And one of the points that we make in our 18-page white paper, and I do encourage people to pick that up. You can go onto our website, neighbor.org, in order to access it. But one of the points that I make is that it's the economics that are throwing people into homelessness, first and foremost. And people are surprised to hear that because they see the behavioral health challenges that those who are on the streets have and substance use disorder issues that they may have. And understandably and naturally, they think that's why they've fallen onto the streets. But truly, the number one reason in San Diego, it's not the case in every single city, but the number one reason why people fall into homelessness here in San Diego County is because of the economics. And we now have inflation, which is above 8%. Right. And that's particularly impacting those in the lower economic strata. And so we're seeing more and more people falling onto the streets, which is why we've had a 10% increase, right, in those who are on the streets or in shelters.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, and of course, Neville's been a frequent guest on our Spotlight in the Community show. The face of those people in need has changed, from what it was 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. It's the person that was, dutifully employed, and now, to your point, lost the job. Most people don't have a lot of savings. You know this better than anyone working at a credit union. They are maybe a paycheck away, and then they're in their car, and then they're on the street. You know this, Jim. I mean, you see this all the time. It is amazing how many folks don't understand that. And, and I think, part of it is just educating the public on how close people are to this stuff. But more importantly, how, the solutions can be on that. But one of the things you and I love talking about is debunking some of the myths about homelessness. Talk about some of those.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, to put what you've just said into perspective, the average rent for an apartment here in San Diego is about $3,000. The rental vacancy rate is about 3.5%, which means there aren't enough units, and those units that exist are too expensive. And so that's, again, it points to the economic issues that we have here in San Diego County. And by the way, it doesn't just impact those who we serve, but frankly, think of kids who are coming out of school, right? I mean, who are very well educated, and then they have student loans up the kazoo, right? And they have to repay them, and they can't afford to live here. So we have our own children. I know I have that experience with my children. We have our own children who are moving elsewhere because they just can't afford to live here, right? So it's at all levels, basically. But you're right. I mean, these you and I have spoken about some of these myths that these individuals who are on the streets are lazy, that they want to be on the streets. To tell you that is not the case. I find that the hardest working individuals are those who we serve. And the reason I say that is, think about what it takes to be out there on the streets. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort in order to survive on the streets and then be able to lift yourself up from the streets. And the other is that, as you've asked me before, do people really want to be on the streets? No, they don't really want to be on the streets. And so what we need to do as a community is come up with solutions that really help them and reach them where they are. So individuals, while they may not want to come into congregate shelters, right, and we have a lot of congregate shelters,
right,
and there are various reasons. Some of them are victims of domestic abuse. Right. Some of them are claustrophobic. I mean, there's a lot of issues that are at play. What they don't want, though, is to remain on the streets. So that's why our paper, as an example, raises the need for safe villages, basically. And we've been talking about this. I've been personally talking about it for over a year, so that you can take the individuals who are on the streets in these individual tents and have a safe area, a parking lot, let's say, right, where either through these tents, and we recommend pallet structures, actually, not tents themselves, but through these pallet structures in a safe environment that's secure. A lot of these individuals, especially women, are accosted on the streets constantly, right? So you have a level of security there. Also basic hygiene, where you provide restrooms so that they don't have the indignity of having to go on the streets, right? And also so that the businesses and the residents don't have to suffer through that as well, right? It's not good for them either. And I feel for them. So that there's that aspect of it. You could provide something as basic as meals, and most importantly, start working with them in order to help them out of their circumstances. When you ask people on the streets, would they be willing to do that? Vast majority, absolutely, because they don't want to be on the streets and they want to get out of their situations.
Yeah, and like anything, Neville knows this, being a brand guy and a marketing expert, you got to say it once and you got to say it 1,000 times. You cannot just say it in one and then forget about it. You have to constantly hit that message. I do that a lot when I talk to people who, snarkily say, no, these guys want to be on the street, and I say it probably impolitely to them. You're a moron if you think that, and then that's why I have no friends anymore. No, that's not true. But the bottom line, you have to do that. When we come back from break, Deacon Jim and Neville want to talk a little about Saint Teresa of Calcutta, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then most importantly, as you both know, what can our Spotlight on the Community listeners do to help support those efforts? I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you're listening to Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for more than 60 years. And we're in the Mission Fed studios, beautiful studios here in Scripps Ranch. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. Again, you're listening to Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show here on Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing phenomenal things to San Diego for more than 60 years. We are with Deacon Jim Vargas, CEO of Father Joe's Villages, joined by his colleague, our longtime friend and our partner at Cloudcast Media, Neville Villamoria, Senior VP of Marketing and Community Relations for Mission Fed Credit Union. Right before a break, we're just, chatting about this great report that you have, the state of homelessness. How do people get it again? Do they go to your website?
They can go to our website, neighbor.org, and we've also put it out on social media, but as easy as the front page of our website.
And the beauty of it is not only does it identify some of the problems and the issues, but here's some solutions that people can actually take action, heaven forbid, on that. Talk about St. Teresa of Calcutta. What is that all about?
Well, that's part of the solution, right? I mentioned the lack of affordable housing before the break. And St. Teresa of Calcutta is our most recent affordable housing endeavor. In fact, we cut the ribbon on that in February. And I'm happy to say that all 407 homes are occupied. We have more than 500 people who we've been able to either help off the streets or keep them from falling into homelessness. So it's the largest endeavor, by the way, of its kind in the history of San Diego County, and we're blessed to have it at Father Joe's Villages. Of the 407 homes, 80 of them are designated for veterans. So the only ones who can live in those particular homes are veterans. And then I'm sure that other veterans live throughout the building as well, but those are designated for veterans. We also have 270 of those homes that are what's called permanent supportive housing. That's for individuals who have been typically chronically homeless on the streets, so they have a whole host of issues with which to contend, be it physical, emotional, mental, substance use issues. And so we have comprehensive services that help them, sometimes for the rest of their lives, actually, depending upon their situations. Most of the homes are studios, and they're very nicely sized studios, but we also have 24 one-bedrooms and 26 two-bedrooms. We have community rooms on each and every single floor. Building a sense of community is extremely important through either budgeting classes, as an example, or bingo, playing something as simple as playing bingo. But throughout just building a sense of community, we have 5 different gardens throughout the building, a playground. This is a model even for us. We've been building affordable housing. We Father Joe's Villages for over 20, 25 years, and this building is very different than all the others. So it really is a model we hope for, not only for us going forward, because we're going to build more of this, but also for the community at large.
No, I think that's great. You brought up something, talking about budgeting, and you mentioned, it's one thing to get these folks, off the streets, but also to give them the skill sets they need to be successful when they start looking at gainful employment and all that. Neville, obviously this is in Mission Fed's wheelhouse, teaching people about financial literacy, how to be, very judicious with their money. And while it seems very obvious to folks, it's not. People sometimes have a challenge, managing their budgets. Talk about that. Well,
as Deacon Jim mentioned earlier, even with our own families, they're struggling with affordability, right? So this is a universal problem. It's a systemic problem. With the St. Teresa's Villas, which I had the chance to tour.
Nice.
I would characterize it as designed with dignity. They've really thought about the human-centered aspect of it, like you heard, whether it's as simple as bingo and a place to connect, or having your own place to call your own and have some worth and value and be seen. I think these are the most impactful things. And without that sense of you matter and you can do this, many of the other skills that are important don't get a chance to be exercised. So it starts by actually touching the person at their deepest sense of personhood and beginning with dignity for me. And then we can move up that chain to things like financial education and financial literacy, which absolutely are critical, but they're critical for all of us. And it's just a matter of degree and to what extent we've been exposed, right? If it's a skill, then by definition it can be taught. If it can be taught, then we're all somewhere from don't know it to emerging to getting pretty darn good at it to quote unquote mastery. But we're all on that journey. And the Career Center and the financial literacy, heck, even the dental studio that they have so that people can look the part, so you don't get checked out of the equation just from the very onset. This is what I mean about dignity. They've really thought through the place-based, human-centered, faith-based, data-driven. I don't want to play buzzword bingo, but man, it's a systems thinking approach to addressing a chronic problem that's going to require all of us to, first of all, reframe what the topic is and our relationship to it. It's no NIMBYs, not in my backyard. It's YIMBYs. Yes, they are in my backyard, and I need to be part of this solution too.
Yeah, spot on, very well stated. We're chatting again with Deacon Jim Vargas, CEO of Father Joe's Villages, joined by Neville Villamoria, Senior VP of Marketing and Community Relations for Mission Fed. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You brought up the dental services, and Deacon Jim, you and I have talked about it quite a bit. A plethora of research out there that, if you don't have the right smile, ball game over. And it seems like, how can that be? I said, well, that's why a lot of people don't smile, because their teeth are decayed or they're browning or they're missing. And all of a sudden you've got this view that if you can't take care of your teeth, that means you probably aren't worthy of X, Y, and Z. Talk about how important it is to have that smile in the teeth.
And it absolutely is. And I'm glad that Neville mentioned it. And it's very memorable. And I have people who have visited our facility and have toured it years ago, right? And they always remember the wall of smiles, right? So the before and after of restorative dentistry. And it makes a difference. Of course, self-esteem, it's important. But everything that we do at Father Joe's Village is intentional. So in addition to the self-esteem, and yes, of course, digestion begins in the mouth, right? But also, who's going to get that job? Is it the person with teeth or the person without teeth? We all have our biases, right?
That's right.
Who's going to get housing when they go for an interview? It's the same type of approach, right? So it is very intentional. This is the work that's done by our dentists is typically not paid through insurance, health insurance. But we think it important enough, and that's where philanthropy actually helps, right? For people, your listeners, as an example, who believe in us, and we've used those dollars as an example towards our dentistry.
Well, and I wanted to talk about that now. We got a few more minutes to go here, Deacon Jim. What can our listeners do? Listen, money doesn't grow on trees, last I checked, and these are very, very important. You and I have had this conversation only 4 million times, and Neville probably 4,000,001 times. There's no such thing as too small a donation. Is that correct,
that's
Deacon
correct.
Jim?
That's correct. And we have people who contribute on a recurring basis, actually $10, $25 a month.
Right.
But it adds up, all right? And they have it on auto deposit, in a sense, auto pay, and we see it, and we're very grateful for that. And then, of course, there are those who are able to give more,
right?
And we appreciate that as well. So donations are important. Think about estate planning. I mean, that's another aspect of it in bequests, right? That's another way of doing it, or stock transfers. Volunteering. We've missed our volunteers throughout COVID.
Right.
We're ramping that up again. I mean, we were pre-COVID, we were blessed to have 10,000 volunteers. Can you imagine? On a yearly basis, 10,000 volunteers. I always put a dollar figure to that, to the services. It's about $4 million worth of services.
Exactly.
Which we couldn't do. We couldn't do otherwise. Right?
Well, that's what it makes companies like Mission Fed just so valuable. And Neville, you and I have chatted about this ad nauseum. what makes Mission Fed top of the shelf when it comes to community service and engagement. It's not checkbook philanthropy. We know how money is to turn lights on and build things like these safe villages, but it's the power behind the Mission Fed brand, and that's called the people that work for Mission Fed. And I know, Neville, you're so proud of that.
We are. Thank you for that affirmative feedback, Drew. What's coming up for me is that philanthropy is actually defined as love of humanity. It's not money.
Right.
Money is one vehicle through which you can actually make a change. But if we want to build value, it actually begins with friend raising, and then you can get to fundraising. So connecting with the causes that matter to you, in this case, if you want to make a difference for our local community, the brothers and sisters that are underestimated and unsheltered currently, then my appeal would be start by learning more and getting involved somehow. Because all the data suggests once you do that, once you have that experience, once you see the opportunity, once you see the post and pre-realities, then your likelihood of engaging as you see fit, whether that's having a monthly commitment fiscally, or it's volunteering, or just getting the word out and helping change people's minds and belief systems about the circumstances, you're all philanthropists. Congratulations, you just have been elevated to being a philanthropist.
No, I think that's spot on. Deacon Jim, got about 45 seconds to go here. Any final comments?
Well, in keeping with what Neville just said, I mean, we have thrift stores, and next week is National Thrift Store Day, by the way.
Did not know that.
I would encourage your listeners to come and visit our thrift stores. We have 4 throughout the county, and they're a way of either you able to contribute, and the household goods as an example, donations, furniture, and so forth. People even donate cars, and we're drastically in need of cars, by the way, automobiles that we can then sell, or you could buy very great quality merchandise at these thrift stores, and then benefit from them as well. All the proceeds go to the services and programs. So yet another way to be able to get involved.
Right. What's the website so people can get engaged from volunteering or donating or whatever?
Neighbor.org.
Right. Deacon Jim, promise me you'll be back on sooner than later. And as we always like to do is let's bring somebody on that's benefited from your services. Okay.
I'd love to do that.
Then, either are currently benefiting from it or have benefited and now are doing X, Y, and Z. That's where the proof in the pudding always is that, that's great. They do these services. Is it really helping? Well, we fill the show every single day if we had all those people on.
Absolutely.
Let's make sure that happens.
We have many of those. I'd love to bring that so that you can hear from them directly, right? And maybe we can explore the state of homelessness and that report even further.
And we'll consider that done over here. Deacon Jim Vargas, the CEO of Father Joe's Villages. You make my heart sing every time I see you, my longtime good friend, and Neville Billamoria. Thank you, and Deborah, and Courtney, and Catalina, and just the unbelievable folks that have made this partnership with Cloudcast Media. We're sort of in the first inning over here, and we're just not going to stop till we go into double, quadruple overtime moving forward. So, Neville, always a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Drew. Blessings.
Good to be with you.
You bet. I'm Drew Schlosberg, Cloudcast Media. You've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg, Spotlight on the Community.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.